This program is brought to you by Artisan Films, crafting films like no other. Anatomy has been studied by humans since the beginning of time. Findings have been recorded by scientists for hundreds of years. Even though there is great diversity in species on Earth, there are still many similarities between their anatomical structures. Science has an explanation for this phenomenon: evolution. In order to understand the similarities and differences in structures, the terms homologous, analogous, and vestigial need to be understood.
The simple way of explaining homologous traits is that they are traits that are inherited by completely different organisms from a common ancestor, but they are used for different functions. The whole idea of homology was introduced by Richard Owen in 1848, and to him, these types of traits were structural correspondence, where analogous structures are non-correspondent similarity. In homology, traits are examined at a taxonomic, the classification of order categories, and anatomical level. Traits cannot be homologous without a common ancestor.
The tree of life shows the relationships between different tetrapod lineages, all of which evolved from a single common ancestor. The first tetrapod was alive 350 million years ago. Since then, it has passed on its arm structure to whales, humans, bats, felines, and canines.
Tetrapods, or animals with 4 legs, take their bone structure from that 350 million-year-old organism and are spin-offs, you could say, of that original structure. Think of it like a pedigree, except it's over millions of years. The first organisms would be on top, and their descendants that contained their features are at the bottom. The most common examples would be the common arm structure in humans, birds, whales, and lizards. Since all these animals have the same structure, they all include a humerus, ulna, carpals, radius, and phalange. An interesting way to think about this is asking an engineer to build a bat, paddle, brush, robotic hand, and plane wing, but use the same internal design. It's also astonishing that most mammals have 28 skull bones and 7 neck bones, regardless of the differences in size and length.
Once you know what homology is, you can find them anywhere, in animals or in plants. And because all life shares a common ancestor, we find homologies all over the tree of life. However, not all homologies are obvious. 2 homologies that have adapted to different roles can look remarkably different. Take the beaver, for example. The chomping front teeth look quite different than the tusks of an elephant.
The front teeth of beavers and elephant tusks are, believe it or not, homologous features. They are modifications of the basic incisor tooth structure. Since both animals live in different environments and perform somewhat different functions, the base structure has adapted into different versions, helping each animal to perform their unique jobs.
Similar structures that evolved independently are called analogous structures, or analogies. Analogies often exist between 2 different species that have adapted to similar lifestyles. The saber teeth of the Thylacosmilus and the Smilodon are often mistaken as homologies, but really, they diverged from each other a long time ago on the evolutionary tree.
The analogous structure is also significant evidence that evolution has occurred. In contrast to homologous structures, analogous structures are different structures that have identical functions and appearances. An example of analogous structures are the wings in a bat versus the wings in an insect. While the wings in both animals are flight structures used to fly, they're completely different in anatomical structure. The wings of a bird possess the same bones as a human. It holds the humerus, the ulna, the radius, and so on. Insects, on the other hand, have no internal bone structures in their wings. In addition, insects and birds have no similarities in embryonic origins.
If 2 species face a similar problem or challenge, evolution may end up shaping them closely together while still having different ancestors. Obvious examples would include sharks and dolphins.
Unlike homologous structures, which provide evidence that species have derived from a common ancestor, analogous structures instead prove that certain distinct species have become gradually more similar over time. Analogous structures are the result of convergent evolution, when different species adapt to similar selective pressures or environments. The result is similar features and characteristics developing in different organisms despite living in separate environments. A great example would be the relationship between a shark and a dolphin. These are two completely different species. Sharks evolved from a cold-blooded primitive fish with a skeletal system made of cartilage, while dolphins are actually warm-blooded mammals with bony skeletons. Despite being only distantly related, dolphins and sharks look fairly similar in appearance. Both have very stream-like shaped bodies with triangular fins on their back and sides. This is optimal for high-speed swimming in order to catch prey. Both species evolved these features independently of each other due to similar selective pressure. In essence, both species share a similar shape because it is the ideal form for an aquatic predator.
Although different, both homologous and analogous structures have specific purposes in organisms. The final type of structure, the vestigial structure, has little or undeveloped functions. Vestigial structures in humans include the appendix and tailbones, while in flightless birds, it would be their wings.
Vestigial structures
It is believed that vestigial structures are anatomical features in organisms that have diminished in size or usefulness. However, this is not completely accurate. Vestigial structures are actually homologous structures that have identified functions in similar species that no longer serve these functions at all. One discovery regarding vestigial structures are the dysfunctional eyes in a species called the Mexican tetra, also known as the cavefish. They no longer need their eyes because they've been living in the dark for thousands of years. Their eyes imply that they used to live in an environment with lots of light. During some time, along the course of evolution, these fish have evolved to live in caves as a result of no longer using their eyes. The eyes of a Mexican tetra are now considered vestigial structures. From the unusual connection between the teeth of a beaver and the tusks of an elephant, to the similar yet unrelated form of shark and dolphin, and finally, the puzzling, unneeded appendix that all humans are born with. Evolution has left obvious and subtle hints of its process in the study of homology.